Hey guys, Youngblood with you for your Should You Buy video on the Tumbril Nova. And what we're going to do here is actually kind of cover some of the new information that we got through the brochure and the actual sales page that came back, and then cover the Q&A that we got from the initial portion of this, and then we'll go into the Should You Buy portion of the video. So starting out, we get the size. It's 5 meters wide by, 5 meters tall by 7 meters wide by 16 meters long. So this thing is very, very big. Now it does come equipped with some environmental analysis scanners, which kind of helps with overall situational awareness, and then also kind of goes in line with Tumbril's overall like exploration feel to what their brand is going to be providing. It also has good resistance to various environmental conditions, so it doesn't matter if it's very hot or very cold, or maybe there's a lot of sand and you're talking about erosion and that sort of thing. It's very resistant based on the amount of armor that it has on board. I said in the first video that it looked like it had badgers on it, or size 2 laser repeaters, and the stats page does say size 2 laser repeaters. And the brochure says that you can fit any size 2 weapons on the auxiliary turret, which all makes a lot of sense. But the brochure also says that it comes equipped with panthers, which are size 3. So I just want you guys to know that I'm counting on that being a typo and this actually being badgers, unless they're talking about maybe you can equip a single panther by dropping that dual link. I don't think that's what they're talking about. I think it was a typo, but hopefully we'll get clarification in the next Q&A. I was also expecting to see 4 size 2 missiles based on what the launcher kind of looked like on the back to deal with anti-air. But the brochure lays out what's known as the firebug system, shooting compressed energy that's designed to separate before impact. Basically, it looked like it has about 24 of those on board. It was said to keep the Teverin at bay for a long time, so it kind of talked about its effectiveness against air. And I'm assuming this is what has to be that anti-air system, but unfortunately we just didn't get a lot of information from the stats page, as a lot of it's listed as TBD. So as far as modularity and performance and damage, we're just going to have to kind of wait and see. If you don't like the firebug system, are you able to equip just 4 size 2 or size 3 missile launchers back there? We don't really know at this point, so we're going to have to wait and see. So from the initial Q&A for the tank, let's go ahead and just kind of run through what they're talking about with the Nova. And probably the most curious one is going to be about what ships will this actually fit in. Now they went on to say that the height is the primary concern for this ship, and they went on to say that the Idris can definitely carry the Nova. But they said that based on that height, most cargo ships are going to be excluded. Now there was a post on Reddit from a user named Jeff Craig, who went through a bunch of the different options, and most of these ships were no. The Polaris, for example, was said to be able to carry 6 of them, but that's in the hangar that sits on top, so that's not really useful. So the 2 that were given yeses were the Genesis and the Crucible, both of which look like they can carry about 4 of these, which makes those, adds value to those ships. And there was a possibility that you may be able to fit one in the Carrack, but it's kind of in turmoil until we really know what size the Carrack's going to really end up being. Now, the Nova was said to be sturdy enough that it can actually be dropped out of a ship without landing, though it's not necessarily advised, which is a nice feature for the ship, or for the tank, I should say. Because, if the terrain is rough below and maybe a ship of the size of the Carrack can't necessarily land, if it can hover, you can probably drive it out and, be fine. As far as the size of the main gun, it's a size 4, pretty close to what I was expecting. It's unchangeable, but the other weaponry is able to be swapped out. They're saying that in future updates, we're expecting that the main gun will be able to shoot different ammo types. The brochure went on to mention that standard and explosive rounds are possible, but I wouldn't be surprised if we ended up seeing armor-penetrating rounds as well. Now, a really good question that was asked was one that I think we need to know from kind of the balancing perspective, and that was, why would you ever use a tank over a ship? Now, some of the reasons that we're giving is that some areas may end up having strong aerial defense, so maybe it's not necessarily advisable to bring a ship to come in and do the damage because, you may get shot down very quickly. Or maybe there's some tough environmental flying conditions like high winds or, maybe like atmospheric storms that can cause problems, so that just the flying conditions aren't ideal. They did go on to say that it's best used when you've got a tank and a fighter kind of working together, because the ship can be used as almost a recon for the tank. And then the other part there is also that Novas can attack ships. So just like a ship can attack a Nova, the Nova can actually attack ships as well. So it's not necessarily supposed to be totally helpless against like a fighter in the area. As far as the crew positions, there are 2 seats in the front. There's driver and support person, and then the gunner sits in the middle. I'm hoping that what we see is the gunner is really focused in on the main turret and the main weaponry, while the support person ends up being able to remote control the secondary turret, maybe like the countermeasures and the firebug system. I don't want all of that responsibility on the gunner because I think that limits them in some capacity, but we're just going to have to see, and hopefully the second Q&A gives us a little bit more information. Can it be used solo? Yes, but the main gun will end up slaved totally forward, so you lose some situational awareness as well as kind of versatility in driving and shooting. You basically have a fixed weapon at that point. Top speed of the tank is said to be 20 meters per second, which they said seemed pretty high. I think that's pretty low, which would be pretty expected with a tank, but it also comes with a very high acceleration time, so it takes a long time to get up to that 20 meters per second. As far as any weak points, the rear troop entry point ends up leaving some of the tracks exposed. So just like a lot of tanks, and if you've played World of Tanks, for example, you never want to get shot in the back. So you want to make sure that you're not leaving yourself, I guess, vulnerable from the rear. And when asked why this wasn't a hover tank, they said that GravLab technology, which is in the game, is expensive, not only to produce, but also to kind of upkeep and maintain. It's also going to be vulnerable to like distortion and other electronic weaponry, so they keep it simple, but also keep it durable with a track system. There were a lot of questions in the Q&A that were very simple questions and simple answers, so we're going to go ahead and rapid fire those. Does it have a deployable mode? No. What is the main cannon's range? It's about the same as other ballistics, so probably a few thousand meters. Does the Nova hold cargo? No. How many rounds per minute does the main cannon fire? It's supposed to be a little bit slower than ships, so about 30 to 50 per minute, which actually ended up being faster than I expected it to be. Tanks, you normally think long reload time. Does it have countermeasures? Yes, there's 4 tubes on it. And does it shrink down for transport? No, it's a tank. It's supposed to already be in its most compact fashion. It's really supposed to be just as is. So on to the should you buy portion of this video. To be honest with you, I'm still not certain how valuable this is going to be when you have ships present. And here's the way I take this. And keep in mind, I'm kind of comparing this to standard combat today, in my mind at least, because I think that's kind of the direction they're going. If you need a presence that can engage ground targets and have decent anti-air capabilities, i.e. there's lots of surface-to-air missiles around, or railguns, or fighters, and those types of things, then the tank may make sense. In my mind, I see the speed of ships and the weaponry that they bring, and with weapons and longer range and energy and all that type of things. I have a hard time envisioning this being the super effective option if you want to bring the tank. Now, if they're wanting to put a focus on this, then there's going to be places where the environment is naturally hostile to air, just to make situations for this tank to actually be useful. That's not to say that a stable ground platform can't be useful. I'm kind of expecting it to be more durable than spacecraft and probably a more, definitely a lot more stable for firing solutions than an aircraft. But in the natural rock, paper, scissors kind of game we always do in these types of videos, and when you're making, your mental decisions, air superiority is probably going to be the more effective and more versatile option, which makes me think in a game where you have space travel and where most people are looking at flying, I think that makes a lot of sense. Where I see this having more value is in attracting people from varying games like World of Tanks and War Thunder who may have buddies that are already playing Star Citizen, like, hey Mike, I know you haven't been following Star Citizen all that close, but guess what? You can now bring a tank along. And I kind of like that for the same reason that I like the fact that FPS is a part of the game, and being a Marine is a type of career, and all of a sudden you can attract some friends in that play Battlefield and other FPS games. The universe ends up bringing a lot for a lot of different people, and that's kind of exciting. Now, from a pure value perspective, I don't think you get a lot of that in this tank. I think it's basically because of the challenges that are associated with transporting it. I say this is a pass, but if you want a tank, then this is the first and only one that we have now. And while it has what I would consider to be a very constricted value, it could also be fun. If you're just looking at the pure cost to what you can do with it, it loses that logical battle every time. But if you compare it to one very specific role, and this being the only option, then I guess it may make sense. It's really more about realizing that this is going to be challenging to move, challenging to go long distances, is going to face challenges against air. It will really require organizational level cooperation and support, but if you can get past those, then it may be worth it to you. So that's really it for this. We're going to have a second round of Q&A, and I'm going to cover that in a lot more detail. But until then, just stay tuned for more. Have yourselves a wonderful day, and take care.